Talking about some of the key highlights from Down to Earth, the first topic that we would be discussing is about the NCR pollution, the pollution in the region of National Capital of Delhi. Now, this was a topic we have covered in the previous lesson as well, where we have talked about the major cause. As we had looked there, the major causes were the stubble burning. Now, what are the possible solutions that Delhi NCR region is trying to explore? That is interesting. So, one of the options that has been proposed is RFID at the entry point for the payment of all the kind of congestion because of the heavy vehicles and the trucks that has been there. Then all the brick kiln industries that are there should have the zigzag technology that should be used for reducing the level of emissions as well as better combustion standards. So those two are the important parts because of which we say zigzag technology is successful, and only those plants which have zigzag technology should be allowed to function in the region of Delhi NCR, especially during these cold months where the problem of air pollution increases significantly. The next is to have vigilance over all kind of activities that are releasing higher amount of pollution into the atmosphere, be it the construction site, be it the road constructions, be it the burning of garbage or the waste collection that is there. And moving to BS6 standards. Now, what is BS6 standards? Bharat 6 standards. Now, these Bharat standard norms are the norms for fuel emissions. So till now we were using BS4 norms, and now we have moved to BS6, which has significantly lower levels of pollution. So those are some of the steps that we have talked about in the section on controlling pollution levels in Delhi NCR. The next is a very interesting story, and that is the story of agroforestry. Now, one of the oldest tribes of Assam is the Mishing tribe. This Mishing tribe is interesting because just before the lockdown, they were able to make themselves self sufficient and reliant in food. How did they do so? Was through agroforestry. So they planted all types of trees, shrubs, herbs and vegetables, and suddenly there was a lockdown. As a result, all kind of communication and all kind of food supplies was hampered. But still, this tribe was able to do wonderful because they were self-sufficient in their food supply. And agroforestry was one of the basic ways through which they were able to do so. And the key is diversification of food crops. So not just going for a monoculture or a single crop, but rather than going for a variety of crops. If you want to go into more details on agroforestry, we have taken a separate class where we have covered agroforestry and social forestry and the differences between the two. Very, very important for your examination point of view. The next is another important study which talks about the state of world's women, the trends and statistics on the state of global gender equality. Now, there are 6 critical areas that have been focused when it comes to gender equality. Those are population and families, health facilities, educational, equal opportunities in education, equal economic empowerment. Then we focus on ownership of assets that are there, power and decision making roles, and finally steps against violence for a girl child. The studies have shown that females spend at least 5 hours of their daily productive life on the works which are considered as unpaid work. Now, what does this unpaid work include? This unpaid work includes working for the household, care for the family members, production of goods and services meant for household consumption. So this is not counted in the productive economy. When we talk about productive economy, it's just 15.5%. This is a image source courtesy Down to Earth. So it gives us a clear image as to how we have a significantly lower proportion of women empowered in economic terms. However, nearly 85% of the female workforce is working, but it is considered as an unpaid work, or it is work without any kind of dues to them. Again, there have been numerous surveys according to which rural women spend most of their time working. The highest proportion of women working are from the rural segment. This could be paid work or the unpaid work. Unpaid work, as we said, includes the household works, but the paid work which is done on the farm, on the as a labor, as a farm laborer, is also part of it. So the highest proportion of the work is attributed to rural women, then followed by it is the urban women. However, when we talk about growing of child or taking care of the elderlies, that is again a significant time which has been spent by the females. So there is where we understand that gender inequality needs to be understood. The next important topic is very, very important, and this is geoconservation. Now, India has numerous sections. We have three of the images here. One is from Rayoli in Gujarat, where you have one of the world's major dinosaur fossil park that has been seen. The other image is from the region of Udupi in Karnataka, and here you have the volcanic rhyolites that have been seen. And this image is from the region of Rajasthan in the Barmer area, where you have the crater formation that has been seen, and this is due to a meteorite crash. Now, these are all eco-conservation sites. UNESCO has defined geopark as a single geographical area where landscapes are being managed in such a fashion that they are meant for protection, they are meant for education, and they are also meant for sustainable development. What happened in 2004, you have Global Geopark Network, which was GNN, has been established under UNESCO, and this network had 8 Chinese and 17 European geoparks that were there. And all of these are very, very important to understand. You have 195 member nations that were established in 2015, and UNESCO was an official part of it. Also, you have 161 various geoparks in 44 countries that have been established. So geoheritage we have talked about, but unfortunately India does not have any of the geoheritage, any of the centers that have been declared as geoheritage so far. We have most of the geoheritage centers that have been seen in China. You have 41 such geoheritage centers that have been seen, and numerous businesses have been associated to it. For example, if we talk about countries like China, Japan, we have seen local people, farmers, artisans, laborers being involved in it, local cuisines, local promotion of local goods, handicraft industries, and as such it's a source for revival. So if India has one of the geoparks that could be established, it could open up jobs in a numerous way, bring in employment for a huge set of population that could be seen. The next important study that we try to understand is, so as this is the picture from the Bara district, where we have the Ramgarh crater that is seen, not the Barmaid, it's the Bara district, sorry. The next is the COVID and the vaccine development. So we have 4 major companies that are working for the COVID-19 vaccination. Now these are AstraZeneca, Oxford, Bharat Biotech, and Biological E. The next is understanding how COVID has impacted. Now, if we see, we have 10 years of life expectancy that has increased over the years. But if we talk about the healthy life expectancy, it is just increase of 6.5 years. That means, despite the fact that official statistics that we are quoting, where we say there has been an increase in the life expectancy by 10 years, the real increase is only 6.5 years. The next thing we need to understand is, across the world we have non-communicable diseases that have increased significantly. Now what are these non-communicable diseases? Non-communicable diseases are those diseases which cannot be spread from one person to another person. Now, most common non-communicable diseases as of now are obesity, then you have diabetes, high sugar, focusing on various aspects that deal with stress, sedentary lifestyle. So what is required is a lifestyle change. COVID has a very high comorbid conditions where patients have been suffering from either of these diseases, which are considered non-communicable diseases. The proportion in which we have seen the increase for heart ailments, diabetes, kidney diseases have increased by nearly 100 times in the last few decades that we have seen. Also, India is one of the first countries to develop a scheme to understand the non-communicable disease and the spread of non-communicable disease and the means to cater to the right segment of the population. Now, as we have seen new vaccines coming up, new diseases coming up, there has to be a very strong correlation between the lifestyle changes that are required, because those with existing comorbidities are the worst sufferers for these diseases. Again, throughout the globe, we are seeing that most of the countries have not still opened up the schools, but India is in a phase of reopening the schools. There have been no studies so far that have talked about significant impact of COVID and children, but whatever studies have been done so far, there are two important things that must be kept in mind before the reopening of the school has been done. One proposed is understanding the positivity rate. What is positivity rate? Positivity rate simply means out of the 100 people who are tested for corona, if you have less than 5 or less than 5, we say it's a positivity rate of 5%. If the positivity rate of 5% is there, that is an ideal figure to start the schooling. But again, when we say state-wise figures, we cannot say the whole of the state would have the same figure. So rather than going on to a decision where we say state-wise the school reopening should be done, it should be district-wise based on the number of the cases each district actually witnesses. So a small-scale understanding or a kind of understanding at grassroots levels is very important. The next is diseases like Kawasaki disease and pediatric inflammatory multi-system syndromes are two of the diseases that have been significantly seen. The cases have been significantly seen where under the Kawasaki disease you have thicker blood vessels that are seen, and under the pediatric inflammatory multisystem syndrome, as the name suggests, there is inflammation of the various organs of the body including lungs, liver, kidney. So those are some of the important things that we need to be vigilant about before the school reopens. The next is understanding Basmati rice and the story behind the Basmati rice. Now, this is a very interesting story. India and the region of Indo-Gangetic Plain is one of the major producers of Basmati rice. India exports two-thirds of the Basmati rice globally, and the next country is Pakistan. However, there is a big controversy that is there. India has nearly 83 districts across Himachal Pradesh, Punjab, Haryana, Uttarakhand, Delhi, Uttar Pradesh, and then you would have Jammu Kashmir, who are these districts are GI tag, that is, they have a tag of geographical indicator, which is a trademark that says that this rice is original or is unique to this specific region. But what important thing we are missing here is, despite the fact Pakistan has just one-third of the exports, over the last few years, exports from India are decreasing significantly and the exports from Pakistan are increasing significantly. Why? Because we are using tricidazole as a pesticide, and this pesticide is beyond the permissible limits as recommended by the international organizations, and therefore the demand for Indian Basmati has declined. The second reason is Indian Basmati costs nearly double the price as compared to the Basmati coming from Pakistan region. So we have a very tough stand as of now for Basmati. Again, if there is a low demand in the global market, the rice mills would procure less. Rice mills would procure less. That means the ultimate impact is going to the farmer. As a result, the farmer would start producing less and the cost would increase. So it's a kind of vicious cycle that goes on and on. But the main thing that we need to understand here is India so far had an exclusive GI tag for basmati rice. That means Pakistan did not had that. To have a GI tag, you need to have a proper development methodology, the scheme where you sort out the region, you mark down the region, and you explain which of the regions would have the GI indicators that would be there. India had two major buyers. The first one was Iran, the second main was Saudi Arabia. After the US sanctions, the trade sanctions that we had with Iran, the decline in the exports to Iran was witnessed, and similarly, as we said, because of this pesticide issue, there was again a decline in the global market. So exports have significantly been affected. But as compared to other crops that we are growing, basmati rice is definitely a good choice. Why it is a good choice? First reason is the proportion of fertilizers that is required is relatively less. Lot of straw remains in other kind of paddy that is there, but when it comes to basmati rice, this straw that is remaining can be reused as a residue management for the purpose of residue management. So that is again an added advantage, and the amount of urea that is being consumed is significantly less in basmati rice. So those are three of the major advantages of basmati over other crops that are growing in India. But again, there had been internal issues. In the region of Madhya Pradesh, we have nearly 80,000 basmati farmers that are there, and they have been demanding 13 of their districts to have the GI tag. Now, the major issue here was the Madras High Court rejected this plea, but they have moved to Supreme Court for further request on getting a GI tag for this region of Madhya Pradesh that is there. Again, what the issue comes in is so far we had an exclusivity with basmati and a GI tag, but recently Pakistan has got the approval for the same. Now if we are about to add Madhya Pradesh and the region, Pakistan would be allowed to add more new areas, and therefore there would be a lot of changes that would be seen, and that would impact ultimately the production and the exports in India. So a very important and an upcoming topic, also in light of the changes with the Essential Commodities Act and the food procurement. This has become a very important topic. The next is the scrappage policy. Now, what do we mean by scrappage policy? The retired vehicles that are there, or the old vehicles that are there, more than 20 years old, or if you want to voluntarily retire your vehicle after 10 years, mainly for a 3-wheeler, 4-wheeler, or a heavy vehicle, it is expected that the pollution standards are significantly worse off. That means those vehicles which were nearly 20 years back, which were following the BS1 norms, were polluting 36 times more, or are polluting, if they are used as of present now, they are polluting 36 times more as of the BS6 vehicles. Similarly, BS2 vehicles are polluting 15 times more, BS3 10 times more, and BS4 twice more as compared to the BS6 standards. So it's very important that we find out the vehicles that are old and have a proper scrapping policy. Now, before we have a scrapping policy, we need to identify how much metal content is there which could be recycled. It is believed that you have nearly 65 to 70% steel that is there that could be recycled and reused. Again, 5% of the commercial vehicles that are there, which includes trucks, buses, heavy vehicles, account for 60 to 70% pollution. So a very important segment is this commercial vehicles that needs to be checked. Not the 2-wheelers, the cars, or the 3-wheelers to that extent, but yes, The commercial vehicles, buses, heavy vehicles, trucks need to be checked because they are the ones which have the significantly higher amount of pollution that they are releasing into the atmosphere. So a scrapping policy becomes important. Government is yet in a draft state and no yet final policy has come up, but it needs to be released before the international guidelines are there. Now the Central Pollution Control Board and a German international organization has estimated that India has more than 8.7 million of the vehicles which have already crossed the end of life. End of life means they are no more useful and they are having a significantly higher level of pollutions as compared to the other vehicles. Now, as we said, what is important is a safe disposal mechanism. So what we need to understand is the World Bank's policy. The World Bank's policy has come up with understanding the whereabouts of the end of vehicles. Now here, unknowns of the end of vehicles must be known. That means each and every vehicle which was there must be traced. So there is a pressure on India from international organizations now to trace each and every vehicle. The reason being, if there is a single vehicle that is being left, it could be sold to a second-hand market and it could further aggravate the issues of pollution. So a complete solution for these old vehicles need to be brought out immediately. Government is also trying to partner with the private companies, bringing in incentives. Now these incentives could be a kind of discount of nearly 15% on so on new purchase, or a kind of rollback offer, or kind of discounts or payback that the government could give on the scrapping of the old vehicle that is there. I repeat again, it was proposed 20 years, but some of the metropolitans has laid down the guidelines for 15 years. Again, if it is a voluntary retirement by the individual for the vehicle, 10 years is the minimum duration that could be done. So if it is beyond 10 years, this could be accepted. So that is what we need to understand. And also, it's believed by if the scenario is not changed and things remain same, by 2025 nearly 20 million vehicles would cross the end life. So bringing in immediate policy measures are important. Next, we come on to an interesting study where we focus on the forest fires. Recently, we have seen numerous forest fires in the regions of Amazon rainforest. Moving northwards, we have the region of California, Oregon, Washington State and United States, which witness serious forest fires these times. So, why this is all happening? We have a town in Siberia which witnessed this summer at 38 degrees Celsius, which is 18 degrees Celsius higher than the normal summers. That means the Arctic areas are warming significantly. Siberia itself has lost nearly 9 million hectares of the forest land, and a lot of permafrost soil is the region where you have organic carbon, and this carbon content is doubled. So that is again an indicator that there is a global warming that is going on. Again, the forests are the sinks for carbon. So it's believed that ocean and forest are the two best carbon sinks. Now, when we talk about forest being a carbon sink, most of the carbon is being absorbed by the vegetative growth or the undergrowth that is there. If these forests start to burn, what would happen? This carbon would be released into the atmosphere. Now, as soon as this carbon is released into the atmosphere, it is fueling up the process of forest burning because it is producing more of heat, more of global warming, and further aggravating the issue of forest fires. So it's a kind of dangerous cycle, we could say, that could actually be impacted because, as we said, forests are the carbon sinks. If forests are burning, this carbon is being released into the atmosphere, which is further leading to global warming, and more global warming further leading to rise of temperature and furthermore forest fires. So forest fires have turned out significantly dangerous in the regions of specifically the west coast of United States these days, where you have significant amount of carbon monoxide emissions that are being seen. Also, we have seen significant wildfires in the regions of Australia, and it's believed only in the month of August in 2020 we have nearly 9 times more forest fires as compared to the last year. So significant rise in the proportion of forest fires have been witnessed day in and day out in the regions which are being exposed and which are highly affected by global warming. The next interesting study is about khas. Now, khas is one of the grass that grows in a sandy area. The idea is in the regions of coastal area where you have lot of flooding, these grass are grown because the roots of these grass are very good absorbers. So any extra kind of water or moisture that comes in, these roots quickly absorb it. So the khas, which is also known as Vetiveria zizandonis, is native to India and it belongs to the Poaceae family. The roots are very interesting because there are nearly 150 aromatic molecules that are present with oil, which is viscous and less volatile and has been used for many medicinal purposes as well. You have roots that go up to 4 meter deep, and therefore a lot of water can be absorbed and water conservation is seen. Widely used in the regions of coastal area, as we said, mainly in Karnataka and Kerala, for the same purpose, to avoid the waterlogging, to avoid the flood situations in those areas. Now, what are the purposes khas is used for? Khas is used in numerous things. For example, perfume. For keeping your areas cool, you might see use of khas shields in the coolers. Again, it is an excellent diet for people suffering from depression or nervous disorders, also for skin diseases. It has proved its role for diabetes, for disinfecting wounds, and for strengthening the urinary system. So those are some of the major applications and use that have been seen. Interestingly, one of the most important studies that have come up with khas is it is an excellent carbon sequestration plant. That means it has an ability to absorb extra carbon from the atmosphere. So far, teak, poplar and eucalyptus were considered excellent plants for carbon sequestration. Recent studies have shown that khas plant has an excellent capacity to absorb extra carbon dioxide from going or getting released into the atmosphere. Also, we are talking about developments where root digging implements are being prepared with khas roots. So khas roots are considered sturdy, and digging equipments are being prepared with khas roots. So that is again an interesting development, and this could actually reduce the cost of digging itself by 80%. So again, an interesting use that has been defined. The next interesting study is about immune system. Now, recently we have seen lots of companies advertising about their products that use this product, you would have good immunity, use this sanitizer. This sanitizer itself is immunity booster. So you have lots and lots of media coverages you are seeing these days, and people are getting floated away by the thoughts and the ideas into the market. But let's understand how this immune system actually works. So immune system can either be innate or acquired. Innate is something that is been that a person has, and it's the first line of defense. Now this comes through the initial upbringing years, from the day of the child's upbringing. So the association with mother and the child is an important factor that helps explain the initial immunity of a child. The next important thing that we need to understand is the role of B cells and T cells. Now, B cells and the T cells are the cells that basically tailor the immunoglobulins in the body against the antigen. So, it's basically the antigen-antibody reaction that we are trying to understand. Now, what happened, the disease comes and goes, be it any of the disease. We are not specific to COVID right now, but the idea is the disease comes and goes, but these B cells and T cells have the traces or the imprints. So these memory remains in these protein molecules, and this remains in the body. And this is the simple principle on which any of the vaccination works. So what a vaccination does is it just imprints the memory, and since the memory remains in the body, what would happen? Any foreign particle that is attacking would be prevented, and body can easily defend against that foreign molecule. So creating a memory is the key idea that we are focusing on when we are talking about any kind of vaccination. But what when it comes to viruses? Viruses do not behave in a significantly similar manner as any bacterial infection does. Why? Firstly, because it's very hard to classify a virus whether they are living or non-living. The reason being, their movement is not there, but as soon as they infect a person, there is a movement. And that is where we understand a very controversial statement where we say viruses are neither living nor non-living, and there is a significant debate about the existence of virus. So what these viruses are and the mutations that viruses produce are very, very difficult to understand, and that's one of the reasons that we say that understanding whether if we are producing a vaccine against COVID, will it be effective, will the strain change, and will there be any mutation that would be there, and also can a person be vulnerable to reinfections if any. So those are some of the questions and debates that have been asked. The next is several studies have been done globally, and different results have been brought. We have seen a very interesting study where it says that Africans migrated from Africa to India. They migrated to the coastal areas, and when they migrated, their genes and the strains they brought were much more sturdy, and as a result, the people from Africa and India predominantly have a better protection against viral infection. But as these people slowly moved towards the plain areas where the climate was much more soothing, mainly in the regions of China mainland, their immunity started to decline. So there have been studies which have quoted that people from the region of Africa have relatively better immunity as compared to people from the region of China. So that is one of the studies that have been quoted. Again, cytokine levels are important, specifically for a disease like COVID, as it has been seen. Cytokine storms have been seen. Now these cytokine storms are less likely to develop a long-term immunity in a person. That means a person who has been exposed to a cytokine storm would have relatively less long-term immunity in the body. The next important study that has come up has shown the habits that have significantly affected, or we could say lifestyles that have significantly affected the initial days of upbringing of the child, where as we said, the association of child and the mother have been very different in the Western world and the Eastern world, and therefore the immunity in the Western world is considered relatively less. So that is again one of the markers that have been studied. Now, what diet you should take to protect yourself or to have a good immunity is something that has been debated. Nothing well proven yet, but yes, there has been always debates around vitamin C or vitamin D. So let's understand what exactly is it. Vitamin C is considered excellent source for both innate and acquired immunity. Now, what happens is it accumulates in the phagocyte cells, and as a result, it has a ability to enhance any kind of chemotoxic reaction, that is movement against a chemical or movement towards a chemical signal that comes in, and as a result, the pathogen that enters, killing of the pathogen becomes much more easier. Specifically for diseases like pneumonia, it is believed that vitamin C is an excellent source. Vitamin D Now the role of vitamin D. Firstly, we get most of the vitamin D actually from sunlight, but yes, we have other sources as well. But the role of the vitamin D is mainly when it comes to expression of the macrophages which are involved in killing the pathogens. So killing of the pathogens is the role where we have the role of vitamin D. Extra dosage of either vitamin D or any of the fat soluble vitamins is dangerous. So right amount, right dosage is very very essential when it comes to fat soluble vitamins. But on the other hand, water soluble vitamins, vitamin B, vitamin C, if there is surpassing the dose, it's okay up to a limit. The next is again exposure to certain concentration levels are important. For example, if a child is exposed to lead concentration of 1 to 5 micrograms per deciliters, the probability of getting severely ill is much more higher as compared to person or a child with low exposure to lead levels. We also understand this through the lead poisoning that we have seen, and lead is one of the major components of the ancient or the old paints or the old buildings where you have the paints that are being used. So lead proportion and the proportion of lead is significantly important. Specifically, these are the studies which we are quoting from the regions of America where you have significantly higher proportion of lead levels that are seen in old homes or the ancient homes that are there. Exposure to chemicals, any kind of pesticides, specifically dioxin, is very very important during the maternal period or the upbringing of the child, and that could be detrimental to the health of the child, specifically when expression of genes in case of COVID are concerned. So there are numerous studies that have revolved around, but still we have a lot more to understand. Significant studies have come up with vitamin A and a regulated intake of vitamin A, which is important because excessive intake of vitamin A again could reduce the body's immunity level. So the body's action to produce immunity could be reduced if excess vitamin A intake is there. So these are the basic ideas that we need to understand. We would be covering many more interesting topics. Just a quick recap of what we have done. Some of the important questions that could come up from this section are the section on geoconservation, Basmati rice, the conflict between India and Pakistan, and how GNN has worked with UNESCO. These are some of the key things that have come up with this edition. We would be talking about many more interesting lectures. Stay tuned. Have a wonderful day ahead.